Meeting is being recorded.
Okay, I see it's 4 o'clock. I also see that Stuart's not online yet from the committee, but I think we'll get started. I'll require a mover and a seconder for a resolution to convene as a committee of adjustment for the May 11th, 2022 hearing. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Karen, seconded by James. That the Committee of Adjustment for the Corporation of the Township of Seguin hereby convenes at 4 p.m. on Wednesday, May 11th, 2022. The Committee of Adjustment hereby convenes a public meeting as per the Planning Act. Applicants and the public can speak at the public meeting. When asked who wishes to speak to an application, please raise your hand and direct all comments through me. Notice of the decisions will be sent to applicants and to the public if requested. Any person may appeal a decision or condition of approval within 20 days after the notice of decision. Okay, I'll require a mover and a seconder for a resolution to accept the agenda for today's meeting is circulated. Moved by James, seconded by Terry. That the Committee of Adjustment for the Corporation of the Township of Seguin hereby approves the agenda for the May 11th, 2022 hearing. I'll also require a mover and a seconder for a resolution to accept the minutes of the previous meeting of the committee. Moved by James, seconded by Terry. That the Committee of Adjustment for the Corporation of the Township of Seguin hereby accepts as read and circulated the minutes of its last hearing that took place on Wednesday, April 13th, 2022. I'll now ask the Committee of Adjustment for disclosure of any pecuniary interests with respect to today's applications. No conflicts noted. And I will now ask the Secretary Treasurer to introduce the first application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of minor variance application A-2022-0012-H for Elliott is to permit the relocation and enlargement of the existing dock on the subject property, and it's requesting a variance for an increase in the maximum shoreline structures and an increase in maximum combined surface area of all docks. Correspondence stating concerns was received from Steve Dunlop.
Does anyone in attendance wish to speak to this application? No one?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I believe Ms. Hamilton has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. An electronic hand. Sorry.
Yes.
I'm old. I'm old. Please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Christy Hamilton of MPS
Join the meeting.
Engineering and Design on behalf of the Elliott McAmoyle family. And I just want to, I'm the applicant, so I just want to say a few words, mostly in regards to the concerns that Mr. Dunlop has. So yes, the property is for sale, but the applicant this application really has a relevant factor to that because the owners are planning on doing this whether this sells or not. So if it sells, it'd be a condition that the present owner is going to apply for the building permits, proceed with the work, and close out all building permits as part of, you know, a condition of sale type of thing. It's really on the market just to get some feelers right now. You know how the market is right now. So he has concerns about the service road. The service road was actually present long before the Elliott Macamoyles purchase. So they have used it obviously for their development and would continue to use it for property service reasons, like how do you get propane deliveries and how do you get your septic serviced if you don't have some sort of a service path road on an island property. Other than that, you know, the reason for the dock to be over here is for that service road. It's because everything is up a hill to get to the cottage, and it'd be nice to have the dock in this location so that they can unload groceries, etc. You know, any kind of maintenance stuff that's going on, load it onto a golf cart or a gator or something and take it up the hill to the residents. This is all I have to say. If any of you have any questions, I'm here to answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else in attendance wish to speak to the application? Okay, I don't see any electronic hands, so do any of the committee members have any questions? Gary?
Mr. Chair, through you to, I guess, Jamie, I guess. So the issue here, Jamie, is it's a point lot, so there's a lot of waterfront shoreline, but it's the width of the point that's the stumbling block. Is that why we're really looking at this?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. There's a couple aspects of it. The two variances that that are necessary are and if I may ask, if you're not speaking, put your phone on mute. There's a couple phones that are into this call that are not muted. That would be appreciated. So yes, there's a couple aspects here. The variance relates to the maximum permitted width of shoreline structures. And in this case, the dock's being moved from one location on the property, an existing dock, to another location on the property. And it's going to be running widthwise instead of lengthwise. So that's one of the results. The second relates to the actual cumulative area of all surface docks on the property. Now, from the planning side of things, we think the variances are appropriate. And to your point, the amount of actual, we'll call it real estate shoreline frontage, is quite substantial because it's a point as opposed to the linear frontage that the zoning bylaw measures. So, and no matter where you're viewing the property from, only really one dock is visible unless you're right at the point. So if you're on the side of the property where the boathouse is, you're just seeing one dock. If you're on the side of the property where the dock is, you're seeing one dock. So we believe that the visual impact is quite limited in this instance.
Okay, thank you. I know the island, I know the lot. I was just wondering how it got caught in a variance. So thank you. I don't have any problems with this one at all.
Do any other committee members have any questions or concerns? Just have one question then, Jamie. The correspondence that was received from Mr. Dunlop indicated that there was some discussion with the planning department last year in regards to reconciling some kind of a natural reconciliation of that service road that is on the property. Is there any record of that on file at the town? I mean, Ms. Hamilton's explanation was excellent in regards to the purpose of the service road, but if there was already some discussion between the Dunlops and the planning department in regards to reconciliation of that service road or some partial reconciliation of it, then that may make a bit of a difference whether we pass this now or defer it until that can be resolved.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any information on file. That issue predates my involvement with the township on planning matters. There may have been some discussion about that. In any event, I don't believe that the service road and really has any impact on the 4 tests of the variance that are to be applied in this instance. So regardless of whether discussions were had or not, I don't think it impacts the four tests of the minor variance upon which these applications are evaluated. So I don't believe it would change staff's recommendation on this application regardless.
Okay. And if I can just ask a question for Ms. Hamilton. You mentioned that it was going to be a condition of the current owners that they would apply for and close and complete any construction and or permits as a condition of sale. Are there any current open permits on that property at this time?
Not at this time.
Okay,
All the boathouse, the bunkie, and the cottage are all signed off at this time.
okay, perfect. Thank you. Then I'll require a mover and a seconder for the resolution to approve this application. Moved by Stuart, seconded by Terry. That the Committee of Adjustment hereby approves variance application A 2022-0012-H to permit the relocation and enlargement of the existing dock on the subject property. The dock is to be relocated from the western portion of the property to the eastern portion of the property, and requests variance of the following section of zoning bylaw 2006-125. Bylaw section 4.28, paragraph B, shoreline structures and facilities. Permitted is 23 meters, existing is 22.8 meters. Proposed is 30.2 meters, requiring a variance of 7.2 meters. Also, 4.28.2, paragraph E, maximum combined surface area of all docks, 168 square meters. Existing is 198 square meters. Proposed is 201 square meters, requiring a variance of 33 square meters, subject to the following conditions. The extent of the variance will generally conform to that shown on the sketch plan submitted in the application, and that the owner applies for and obtains a building permit within 2 years of the date of decision of the Committee of Adjustment. Are there any further comments or questions prior to voting on this resolution? All in favor? It's unanimous.
Thank you, Ms. Hamilton. So the application has been approved. You'll get a letter in the next few days notifying you of the decision, and the 20-day appeal period now starts.
Thank you very much, everyone.
I will now ask the Secretary Treasurer to introduce the next application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of minor variance application number A-2022-0015-H for Anchor is to construct a new cottage on the subject property and is requesting a variance for an increase in maximum gross floor area. No correspondence has been received.
Does anyone in attendance wish to speak to this application?
I don't know how to wave, but that's fine.
Adam,
Yeah, sorry.
a wave works perfect. It's the electronic ones that give me the problems. Go ahead.
I don't know how to electronically wave, so that's even better. They're just trying to rebuild a cottage on the property. The property, if you were at the site, you come into the driveway and then it drops off towards the water. So we're literally just applying for the ability to build a cottage within that first 60 meters that's slightly bigger than the gross floor area. In actual fact, the cottage as we plan it does not need a variance. What we're applying for, if you look at page, I don't know what pages you were given, but it's my A5 where it shows the basement. We are only applying for a variance for that utility unfinished crawl space if the bedrock is found to provide a full height basement. When I was on site, I did scratch down in a few spots, and I'm pretty sure that we are not going to need the variance, but we're applying for it under the assumption that we don't want to stop the building if we find out, oh, we have a full height basement front to back. But if you were on site, the back stake that I placed by the staircase going down to the existing cottage, there's not a lot of ground cover there. So that tells me that we're going to have little to no crawl space at the back of the property. So yeah, it's more or less just we're applying for the variance just for what if that happened type thing. So.
Okay, is there anyone else in attendance wishes to speak to the matter? Do any of the committee members have any questions? Then I'll require a mover and a seconder for the resolution to approve this application. Moved by Terry, seconded by Karen. That the Committee of Adjustment hereby approves variance application A 2022-0015-H to construct a new cottage on the subject property. The new cottage is to be constructed in a similar location as the existing cottage and located further back from the high water mark than the existing cottage, and requests a variance of the following sections of zoning bylaw 2006-125. Bylaw section table 6.3, maximum gross floor area, maximum permitted is 339.38 square meters. Proposed is 407 square meters, requiring a variance of 67.63 square meters. Subject to the following conditions. The extent of the variance will generally conform to that shown on the sketch plan submitted in the application. That the owner applies for and obtains a building permit for the new screen porch within 2 years of the date of decision of the Committee of Adjustment. That demolition permit applications be submitted for the existing boathouse and shed prior to the issuance of a permit for the new cottage. That the property be subject to site plan control pursuant to section 41 of the Planning Act. And that the owners submit a revegetation plan prepared by a qualified professional to be approved by the Director of Planning and to be implemented by site plan control. All in favor? Unanimous, it's passed.
Thank you. So Mr. Vokes, the application has been approved. You'll get a letter in the next few days notifying you of the same, and the 20-day appeal period now starts.
Okay, I may have questions on the revegetation plan, but I'll contact you about that later, just so that I make sure I get it done properly. Okay, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
I now ask the Secretary Treasurer to introduce the next application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of minor variance application number A-2022-0016-H for Benson is to construct a new dwelling, screened porch, and attached deck on the subject lands, and is requesting a variance for an increase in maximum lot coverage within the first 60 meters. No correspondence has been received.
Does anyone in attendance wish to speak to this application?
Good evening. My name is Savas Bradis of Plan Muskoka, PO Box 5384, Huntsville, Ontario, P1H 2K7. I'm here this evening representing the applicants as their agent and as a professional planner. I don't have a lot to add. I read over the staff report and I think it accurately depicts the application. I agree with the recommendations that it meets the forecast for minor variance and that it should be approved. Just to give you a couple brief points, the proposal here is for additional lot coverage, which would allow for a slightly larger screen porch than what the dwelling, which is actually currently under construction on the property, would normally permit. And also to allow for some additional decking that would be over the 1 meter height requirement for counting towards lot coverage. So really what we have here is an existing, or I shouldn't say existing, but a dwelling under construction that is going to be just slightly large over what is currently being constructed there today. The property is very well vegetated. It's a fairly large property. It's an island property. The area in front of the proposed large screen porch and deck is well vegetated with a fairly thick shoreline buffer. I think the photographs that were in the staff report fairly accurately show that for your consideration if you want to see for yourself. I think that would have the effect of visually buffering the additional coverage that's being proposed and would have very little impact on visually for voters passing by the property, viewing the property. So I feel like these lands can take the additional 1% coverage and not have any sort of effect where built form would dominate natural form. So that's really all I have to add. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any of the committee members have any questions? No? Then I'll require a mover and a seconder for the resolution to be approved of this application. Moved by Stuart, seconded by James. That the Committee of Adjustment hereby approves variance application A 2022-0016-H to construct a new dwelling, screen porch, and attached deck on the subject lands and request variance to the following section of zoning bylaw 2006-125. Bylaw section 6.3, table 6.3, maximum lot coverage within the first 60 meters. Maximum permitted is 6.25%, proposed is 7.25%, requiring a variance of 1%, subject to the following conditions. The extent of the variance will generally conform to that shown on the sketch plan submitted in the application. All in favor? Unanimous.
Thanks, Savis. The application has been approved. You'll get a letter in the next few days notifying you of the same, and the 20-day appeal period now starts.
Thank you.
I'll now ask the Secretary Treasurer to introduce the next application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of minor variance application number A-2022-0017-H for 215-8443 Ontario Inc. for Clopot is to permit an extension to the existing dock on the subject lands and is requesting a variance for an increase in dock length. Letters of objections were received from Chris and George Gilly and Sandra Miller.
Does anyone in attendance wish to speak to this application? Mr. Ledger, if you could take yourself off mute, please.
Thank you. I guess I need a new haircut if I'm Mr.
Oh, sorry, Terry.
That's okay. No problem. So this application is for dock length only, is for the variance. We comply with all other zoning bylaws regarding docks, including the area setbacks, etc. And I think perhaps the best sort of way to look at this is through the aerial photo that's in the package. You can see that this is and you probably know this bay, it's very shallow and it's also protected. So the water depth is minimal. So we're just trying to sort of bring the dock out to where the other docks in the area are, because that's where the water depth works for boats, particularly the new ones that are mid-drive. But anyway, we also took a look at the neighbors' concerns, and I think most of them are regarding the reconstruction that's going on with at the cottage site, although it's not really part of the dock application. It's there, but we have had the zoning or the bylaw officer out way in the beginning when we first got started there, just sort of clearing up the lot, and people get excited, it's a new lot. So but there were trees cut down, and we worked with the bylaw officer. We did a site plan for new trees. The new trees have already been planted, and the cottage isn't done yet. So we're more than happy to continue to work with the municipality to do whatever needs to be done for revegetation, and have no issues with that. And I see the owner, Mr. Clopot, is on here too. I don't know if he wanted to speak as well, but I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Sure, Terry. I want to add quickly that we actually complied with bylaw concerns. They asked us to submit a site plan of where the replantings would be, and they also gave us a deadline date. I believe it was the second or third week of October of last year. We complied with that deadline. The trees were planted as you suggested, and all remain alive through the winter season. And we did go through the permitting process successfully, and that's all I have to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any of the committee members have any questions?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, to either one of to the applicant or his is representative. You're asking for roughly 80 feet of extension, is that correct? So what depth of water are you looking to get out to?
We looked at it and we figured it was about 3.5 feet. If we were to arrive at the same, I guess, going out as our neighbors have. So I guess we're all trying to get to that same 3.5 to 4 feet of depth. It obviously depends on the timing of the season.
Right, because I mean, I walked out on your existing dock to the end now and,
Yeah.
and you know, it's probably 3.5 feet of water there now.
Yeah, I'm sure this is probably the highest it'll be. When I was there, the last time I tried to access it with my boat, which was a 21 footer outboard, the third week of July, I couldn't make it to the dock.
No, I not doubt that, but I'm questioning the 80 feet. You know, 80
Yeah, I mean,
feet
it
quite a
would
way.
bring us parallel to the neighbors to the left. If you see the aerial view, I don't know if you have that aerial.
No, I'm looking at the aerial view.
Right. So we're just trying to get to where they are.
Well, I think the concern, sorry, Terry, the concern that I have is that you may want to get to the length of dock that they have, but what the application is in regards to your property for us to review. And the water depth, it is a substantially legal non-complying dock that is there now because of the shoreline that you have there. But when I walked out, the same as Terry, there appeared to me to be sufficient water level there to receive and accept any boat. My concern is extending it another 40 feet, then puts you that much closer to your neighbor's boathouse on the right-hand side when you're looking out from the end of the dock. The physical length of the dock of your neighbors on the left when you're standing at the end of your dock, we have no idea what the water depth is there. It could be completely different than yours. It might even be more shallow there than what you have, Mr. Clopot,
Yeah.
where you are.
Right.
That's my concern as a committee member.
Sure. I think the only issue is when you do it. Right now would be the deepest, but throughout most of the summer, you can't. I couldn't get there. Like I said, it wasn't any fancy boat. It was an outboard 20 footer, and I couldn't access the dock. Third week of July.
Sorry, Terry.
So, Mr. Chair, then, I mean, there is data available. The federal government measures the water levels in Port Darling, I believe. And of course, the bottom is the bottom. So, and I'm not adverse to allowing anyone to get sufficient depth of water to moor a boat, whatever is practical. But in this case, I mean, if you're applying to extend a dock, especially that far, I mean, it's fine to say why you want to do it, but in my mind, you should have the data to support what you want to do. And I don't see it here, to be quite frank. I mean, we can talk about the water levels up in the spring. I know it's up in the spring, so, and it goes down in August. But, to just summarily approve something this length based on no data, I mean, I'm uncomfortable with that. I propose to have it deferred until some data to support.
What kind of data would you be looking for?
Well, I think you need what's the they give you the water levels. You can go back over on the site, on the government site. I mean, it'll show you what the elevations of the water are, and you get an elevation of the bottom and how many feet that you need to dock a boat. And because the more that this dock extends, in my mind anyhow, I don't know, I'm only speaking to myself, but the more that this dock extends out into the lake, the more the privacy of the neighbor to the right, he loses more privacy the farther it extends out. So to me, you need some extra length on your dock to dock a boat. I don't have a problem. Do you need that much? That's what I don't. I don't see the data to support that for me. So
I think that the one possibility to consider then, Mr. Klopat, is for a deferral of this application, either until you're able to obtain government water level records for the lake, or defer until later in the summer, July or August meeting, and see what the water level is at that point. And if the water level is substantially lower when the committee goes out, then it's a different discussion. But then you're just deferring it and allow the water level that you're claiming will naturally drop between now and July or August. By deferring it, then we can reevaluate it at that time.
Understood. Okay.
Okay, are you agreeable with deferring it then? If we make an application to defer it?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. And what would the process again involve all of us, taking that walk out to the dock? I want to make sure that we're all on board with what kind of data you're expecting me to provide to kind of, further the reasoning for the dock extension. I just want to make sure I get you guys everything that you're looking for.
Terry?
I would think an elevation of the bottom of the bottom of your bay, proposed where, along the full length of what you're proposing. So where it is existing now, halfway out at the end type of thing. And then the elevation of the surface water. We all know that the little Lake Joe and Rosso, the fluctuations are a lot greater than they used to be because of the power management issues, with managing the water for power management. What's reasonable to moor a modern boat, and there you go, right? And if you can get away with a little bit less, that would be better. If you need the full thing, well, then we'll consider it. And then I think we've all done our due diligence with respect to this matter.
Sounds reasonable.
Taylor?
But just thinking alternatively, because some of the concerns are about the neighbor to the south privacy, if the applicant and their agent could also try to address that in case they can't get detailed depth information, and in case there is any concerns on timing to midsummer, if that could be another one of the three courses forward, just minimizing impact.
So Taylor, would you then suggest that this be deferred until the August meeting, which would take a site visit by the members of the committee out towards the end of July, which is reasonable, which is going to be, it's either for the end of July or the end of August that you're going to be looking at your lowest water levels?
I wouldn't actually recommend that. I'm quite comfortable with the staff report as written and staff's recommendation, but I was thinking another option would be to minimize the timing, is rather than basing the deferral upon depth levels. The concern seems to be the impact of privacy to the neighbor of the south. So if it could be designed in a way that minimizes that perceived impact on them. So if there's a shorter length that can be accepted by the applicant, that might be a much straighter solution than detailed depth charts.
All right. So then what you're saying is, if I'm hearing, then Terry, would you want an opportunity to rework your application, your plan, to see if there's some alternative where you could place that dock to minimize the impact on the neighbor to the right?
Yes, I've started holding off till everybody finished speaking, but I think, the length is, you can see the neighborhood, you can see from the aerial shot where it's low and where there's deep water, just by the color. But I see that neighboring property to the south is also the entire point it looks like their boathouse is on the northern side and that they probably use the southern side more often. So I question how much privacy, but we're willing to sort of shorten it if we can, just as long as that we can still get a boat in. We do meet the side yard setbacks. So that's, those setbacks are there for privacy between neighbors. But yes, we'd be happy to sort of look at this more closely. If we can shave off some feet, I don't think that's an issue. I'll refer to the owner as well, see if that's okay with him, but we're happy to do that.
Well, I don't know if the owners to the south who have the privacy objection are on this Zoom, but it was our understanding that the only dock space to that south point is already partially submerged in water, and that owner has applied to actually have their permanent new dock placed on the other side of the point. So I'm a little confused about the privacy argument, because if anyone who's walked out there can see, it's not really a usable dock or boathouse in its current form at this point.
Okay. Then, Taylor, then are we able to make a motion to defer?
Yes, I just thought it would help the applicant understand what kind of their marching orders would be, the different options available to them before they come back to committee for a final decision.
Okay.
So sorry, just if I can understand,
Terry?
because I'm a little confused. Is the obstacle the privacy or the perceived depth of water of the dock?
Well, the obstacle, it's not an obstacle. The bylaw allows you 15 meters of length under the current bylaw. But because of the shoreline that you have, obviously that's inadequate. So there has been a substantial dock built there in the past, far beyond the 15 meters. The question is, you're now you're put forward an application to extend it another 40 feet. So it's not just 40 feet beyond what's there, it's the totality of the whole length. And is it required? Because your neighbors on the left-hand side have longer docks, I understand, how that looks to you, and I also understand, you have neighbors on the right. The issue is in regards to your dock, and we have to look at it in totality.
Mm-hmm.
And in totality, we want it to be reasonable, as Terry Fellner has said, for you to be able to park a boat in there. And quite frankly, I think this week when I've been on site, and when I believe what Terry had said when he was on site, you can park a boat there.
Yep.
But I understand your concern. We understand your concern that come mid-July, first week of August, when water levels are dropped, you may not be able to get in there to put that boat in. So for us to approve it to go beyond, even further beyond the 15-meter allowance, we just want to be sure that it's required. If it's not required in the middle of August and that dock has the same water depth at the end of it, then that's the issue. Is we have a responsibility to due diligence to ensure that there is an actual requirement for it to go on. You've made the application now, we've all gone and visited it. And if you look at that water level is sufficient to bring any boat in that you want. Your 21-foot boat would arrive there and be able to park at the side of the dock. We respect that, you're telling us that in mid-August, you can't get your boat in there. So we either need some kind of formal data, government water levels of the three lakes, or we defer it, and this is to protect your application, defer it to a point where we can go there when the water levels are lower, to be able to ensure that in fact it does need it to be allow us to vote to then pass to put it out that much farther.
Right. Got it. Appreciate the explanation.
Okay. Then I think that in regards to this, can I have a mover and a seconder? to defer this application? Moved by Terry, seconded by Stuart, that the Committee of Adjustment defers variance application A 2022-0017H, owner 2158443 Ontario Inc. All in favor? Unanimous, and we'll defer it. And Terry and Robert, you'll be able to work with planning, be able to bring it back either with data. You may decide that you want to do it at a later date or rework the application so that it doesn't have such a substantial impact beyond what the normal bylaw allowances are.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I now ask the Secretary Treasurer to introduce the next application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of minor variance application number A-2022-001H, 8-H for Churchman is to construct a new boathouse on the property, requesting a variance for an increase in lot coverage within the first 60 meters. A letter of support was received from Donald Stegman.
Does anyone in attendance wish to speak to this application? Terry?
Yes, thank you. This might look very familiar. It's exactly the same application that we had brought to you before. I have to apologize because I missed the lot coverage on this one. So anyway, it is exactly the same. So we're just coming back to rectify that missed variance request. I'm here for any questions you might have.
Okay, do any committee members have any questions? Then I'll ask for a mover and a secondary for the resolution to approve this application. Moved by Karen, seconded by Terry. That the Committee of Adjustment hereby approves variance application A 2022-0018-H, wishes to construct a new boathouse on the property and requests variance to the following sections of zoning bylaw 2006-125. Bylaw section 6.3, table 6.3, maximum lot coverage within 60 meters of the shoreline. Maximum permitted is 7.5. Requested amount is 9.56. Required variance is 2.1%. Subject to the following conditions: that the owner applies for and obtains a building permit within 2 years of the date of decision of the Committee of Adjustment. And 2, the extent of the variances will be limited to that shown on the sketch plan attached to the notice of public meeting. All those in favor? Unanimous, passed.
Thank you. So the application has been approved. You will get a letter in the next few days notifying you of the same, and the 20-day appeal period now starts.
Thank you very much.
I'll now ask the Secretary Treasurer to introduce the next application.
The purpose of minor variance application number A-2022-0019-C for 2033422 Ontario Inc. for Sinkovic is to construct a new dwelling on the subject lands and is requesting a variance for an increase in lot coverage. No formal correspondence was received.
Does anyone in attendance wish to speak to this application? Do any of the committee members have any questions? Then I'll require a mover and a seconder for the resolution to approve this application. Moved by Stuart, seconded by Karen. That the Committee of Adjustment hereby approves variance application A 2022-0019-C to construct a new dwelling on the subject lands and request variance to the following section of zoning bylaw 2006-125. Bylaw section 10.3, table 10.2, maximum lot coverage. Maximum permitted is 5%. Proposed is 7.1%. Variance required is 2.1%. Subject to the following conditions: the extent of the variance will generally conform to that shown on the sketch plan submitted in the application. that the owner applies for and obtains a building permit for the new dwelling within 2 years of the date of decision of the Committee of Adjustment. All those in favor? Unanimous, carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the application has been approved. You'll get a letter in the next few days notifying you of that decision, and the 20-day appeal period now starts.
I now ask the Secretary Treasurer to introduce the next application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of minor variance application number A-2022-0020-H for Taylor is to construct an addition to the rear of the existing dwelling, requesting a variance for an increase in maximum floor area. No correspondence has been received.
Does anyone in attendance wish to speak to this application? Stefan?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of committee. I just have a brief presentation for you today. My name is Stefan Sherbach, planner with Plandscape Inc., 104 Kimberley Avenue in Bracebridge. I'm here today to speak on behalf of James and Kelsey Taylor, who are the owners of the subject lot, and I do see that James is also in attendance at this meeting. First of all, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to thank Mr. Elgee and your planning staff for your guidance and assistance through this application. We have read the report and we fully support and agree with the thorough planning analysis described in this report. And we also agree with Mr. Elgee's assessment of the 4 tests when considering a minor variance application. Just briefly, I mean, the property itself is rather unique, where the dwelling is deemed to be legal and non-complying due to its location in close proximity to the water. The owners recently purchased the original shore road allowance in front of the property to facilitate this development and this application. And this application has been submitted to essentially permit an addition to the rear of the structure. It will generally not be visible when viewing the property from the water, with the exception of a modest increase in height. And as noted in the staff report, a variation to table 4.1 of your zoning bylaw is required. This specific section permits some development as of right when you're considering development within the shoreline yard. And specifically, this application is to permit a slightly larger footprint than what is permitted as of right. And again, it's going to be located within the rear of the property. A good portion of this addition is going to be situated beyond the 20-meter setback from the water, so therefore the increase is modest. All other applicable zoning provisions will be met. And in addition, just as part of this development, there will be some development, some structure that's going to be removed as part of this application. There's an elevated deck that's situated on the west end of this property, or west end of this dwelling. And the effect will essentially have a reduction to the overall width of the structure, again, along the shoreline. In conclusion, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, it's my opinion that the request is minor. It is desirable as the use is obviously permitted. There will be very little change to the character of this area. And more importantly, it maintains the intent of your official, it maintains the intent of your zoning bylaw and conforms to the intent of your official plan, those being the 4 tests of a minor variance. The conditions are reasonable, and I would request that the committee support staff's recommendation in front of you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Does anyone else in attendance wish to speak to the application?
It's James Taylor here. It's me and my wife who own the property. I just wanted to say thank you so much to the committee for reviewing this application, and I look forward to answering any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you. Do any of the committee members have any questions? Okay, then I'll require a mover and a seconder for the resolution to approve this application. Moved by Terry, seconded by Stuart. That the Committee of Adjustment hereby approves variance application A 2022-0020-H to construct an addition to the rear of their existing dwelling and has requested a variance of the following section of zoning bylaw 2006-125. Bylaw section 4.17, table 4.1, row 2, maximum floor area increase. Permitted increase is 32.5 square meters. Proposed increase is 48.9 square meters, requiring a variance of 17 square meters, subject to the following conditions. that the owner applies for and obtains a building permit within 2 years of the date of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment. An entrance permit be obtained from the Township of Seguin's Public Works Department, and the extent of the variance will be limited to that shown on the sketch plan attached to the notice of public meeting. All those in favor? Passed unanimous.
Thank you, Stefan and James. The application has been approved. You'll get a letter in the next few days notifying you of the same, and the 20-day appeal period now starts.
Thank you, Ms. Irvine. Good night, all.
Night. I now ask the Secretary Treasurer to introduce the final application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of minor variance application number A-2022-0021-F Hughes is to permit the reconstruction of the existing legal non-complying dwelling on the subject property, requesting a variance for maximum floor area increase, maximum shoreline width, maximum height increase, and a decreased front yard setback. No formal correspondence was received.
Does anyone in attendance wish to speak to this application?
Good evening, everyone. I'm representing the property owners for this application, Emily Thaler, Marie Poirier Planning and Associates.
Please
I just have a, sorry, go ahead.
Please go ahead.
I just have a brief presentation to kind of sum up the proposal. As the Secretary Treasurer stated, it's to facilitate the demolition of an existing older legal non-complying single-story dwelling and permit the construction of a new dwelling. The application is required in order to work with natural constraints, minimize vegetation removal, and minimize visual impact. The property is well vegetated throughout, outside of the existing building envelopes, driveway, and septic area. A significant feature exists on the property kind of immediately behind the existing dwelling, which is a rock outcrop. The existing dwelling has a pretty close shoreline setback at one point based on the contour of the shoreline, which is pretty unique. Because of the construction of a cement dock that's there, the location of the actual shoreline could be a bit farther out, but we're erring on the side of caution with our measurement there. The proposed dwelling will be pushed back behind the existing dwelling and the existing boathouse, which will double the setback in that one area and significantly increase it in other areas of the shoreline. The unique contours of the shoreline mean that the setback will be significantly improved, but visually from the lake will even be more so because you've got sort of this little bay that the dock and boathouse sit in, which kind of shrinks the setback, but visually from the water, the new dwelling will appear quite set back. The proposed location is limited because of that significant outcrop. It's basically a vertical cliff, kind of gradually tiered, but then goes straight up behind the existing dwelling. The proposed location for the new dwelling is also preferred to make use of the existing driveway and the already cleared area of the septic, and to minimize vegetation removal that way. The location would also allow for natural revegetation to occur in the shoreline area, in the area of the existing dwelling. It's mostly bedrock there, but there could be sort of a natural reestablishment of vegetation. And the location of the proposed dwelling would be fairly obscured by the existing boathouse as well. If you look along the shoreline directly to the neighbors on Otter Lake, there are quite a few dwellings that are very close to the shoreline, so this wouldn't be out of character, and in fact would be pushed back farther than a lot of the dwellings that are sort of immediately to the east. There's a small size increase to the dwelling, but the existing dwelling is pretty tiny. So what we're asking for is a pretty modest structure with a partial walkout basement. Small height increase, but it would still be within or far below the maximum permitted height, but it would be and only visible sort of in that one area where the walkout exists. The two sides of the structure would have sort of a single story appearance. And it's not anticipated that the proposed structure would exceed the width of kind of what's there, the existing dwelling, and being pushed behind the existing boathouse. It's going to be constructed in the same area of development on the lot. Lot coverage wise, it's a pretty large lot, 1.89 acres. 3.9%, where 7.5% is the maximum permitted. So it's certainly modest development for the character of the property in the area. It's our opinion that the request is minor, conforms to the official plan, and meets the intent of the zoning bylaw. We kindly request the committee support staff's recommendation for approval. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Is there anyone else in attendance that wishes to speak to the application? Do any of the committee members have any questions? Terry?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, to the applicant's agent. So the existing cottage that's there now, it's single story, is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Okay, so the proposed new building is going to have it is proposed to have a section of the lower level that walks out, is that correct?
That's correct.
So is the proposed main floor elevation of the new building, was that set to allow this walkout?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that'd be a question for the builder if he's here, or the designer if they are in attendance. I was understanding that they would be, but so the issue with the property is that the large boulder behind the sort of rock face, it's kind of tiered as well. So I believe the building has been designed to sit as close to the ground as possible, but because of the topography, it kind of, it would be a little bit, it comes down, like the topography of the land comes down so that it can kind of accommodate that lower level. But it's been constructed or designed to fit with the topography of the property. I don't know if that answers your question at all.
Well, I'm not sure that it does or it doesn't. So the main level, I think from what you're telling me, what I'm getting out of this is that the main level, the elevation of the main floor of the new building was set to accommodate the existing topography.
Correct.
And as a net result, you're ending up with more space underneath.
More or less, yeah,
correct?
That's correct. Yeah, that's my understanding of the design.
Okay. Okay.
Do any of the other committee members have any questions?
Yeah, I just have a comment, Mr. Chair. I think this is an extremely beautiful property. In my opinion, you fall in love with it as soon as you see it. But I see this application as anything but minor, and I understand that it's less non-conforming, and I just question, I guess, the whether sort of a minor variance is the appropriate vehicle to drive this application. I don't have an answer for an alternative, but I don't see it minor. It's much larger, even if it conforms with regards to lot coverage. It's higher, requiring a variance there, and just from an overall perspective, it just doesn't seem to fall within the confines of a minor variance application. And I hear the arguments with regards to, it's further back from the water, but it's not minor. So I say that, I guess, by way of comment, because it's an extremely beautiful property, and the topography is such that I see where they need to perhaps build, but I don't see it minor.
Any other committee members have any questions? Well, then I'll require a mover and a seconder for the resolution to approve this application. Do we have a mover and a seconder? We do not have a mover and a seconder for this application. Terry?
Chair, I think this application, my own opinion, this may be too big an ask here. And perhaps a prudent thing might be for the client, for the applicant to consider deferring this and rethinking the ask if they want, or, I mean, that option's available too. I think I just wanted to put that out there and let them decide what they'd like to do.
Mr. Chair, if I may just add one point. I know you haven't asked for staff's comments yet, but if it's helpful, I wouldn't mind making a few points for you.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Just so committee's fully aware of the staff review that was undertaken here and the reasons for the recommendation and the factors that were considered, is that the zoning bylaw, what's really important here is that what's being proposed here is a dwelling, 1 story plus a walkout, and to Mr. Fellner's point, the back of the dwelling appears to be set at grade, which causes the walkout on the front of the dwelling. So it's effectively 1 story with a walkout in portion of it, which is located 12 meters from the high water mark. So that's really what the request is here. When you look at the variance application itself, you'll see a number of sections of the zoning bylaw that are varied, and they all relate to 417, which is a unique section in the bylaw that provides as of right expansion permissions to legal non-complying structures. So those cottages that are currently too close to the water, it lets them expand without going for a minor variance or anything. So it's somewhat unique that those sections are referenced in the application themselves, and it's somewhat questionable whether a variance to those sections is actually needed or not. What's really the important piece here is really the variance to the setback from the high water mark. Otherwise, this proposed dwelling meets the height requirements of the bylaw. So if it complied from a setback provision, it does comply with the height requirements. That height variance that's requested is simply the height increase of a legal non-complying structure of 1 meter, but it complies otherwise with the bylaw contemplates buildings of this height on the shoreline. So that's that's a known thing. The dwelling itself meets the lot coverage requirements. So from an overdevelopment perspective, the dwelling really doesn't reflect overdevelopment of the lot. So I just want to make sure that committee's aware of that sort of thought process that staff's gone through here. It is somewhat confusing in reviewing these applications that deal with section 417 of the bylaw, and some of the numbers often look quite large in terms of percentage increase. But the real focus here in my opinion, needs to be the setback from the high water mark. Is 12 appropriate where 20 is required by the bylaw on this lot? And staff's opinion was that the existing cottage is quite a lot closer to the waterfront than this cottage. So there is a net improvement there in terms of setback. And that siting the building at this location on the lot does 2 things. It's an area where there is trees that have been removed historically, so there's not significant tree removal required if the building were to be set back 20 meters. As well, it provides an opportunity for additional vegetation to be planted where the existing dwelling's currently located. So a net improvement along the shoreline. So, so our consideration as staff was we balanced those factors. The reduced setback of 12 meters approximately with the ability to revegetate where the existing cottage is through applying site plan control, with ensuring that limited vegetation removal is required in comparison to if this dwelling was located 20 meters away from the shoreline. There'd be much more vegetation. It'd actually be a much more prominent building because it would be at a higher elevation. So we balanced those factors and made the recommendation that the variances were appropriate. So I just wanted council to make sure that they understood the rationale behind staff's recommendation to support the variances, despite those variances to 417, which optically the percentages look large, but really the focus needs to be the setback from the high water mark. So, but if this committee is inclined to not approve the application, then I'd suggest deferral would be an appropriate option, so that we may work with the staff may work with the proponent to see if there's any other avenues that could be pursued to reduce any potential impact. So,
well, Jamie, thank you. And we do respect the work that's done by planning, and in respect to the work that's done by the committee members that are going out to these sites, I think that as raised by James, the committee is a committee of minor adjustments. So when you see these numbers, they are substantial based on what they say. And I know you can tell me that there is no limit, but in fairness, I think this is a reasonable application. I really do. I've been to the site, I've looked at it. I think when I look at what they're looking to do, where they're looking to place it, it really sits back behind the boathouse and the existing cottage that is there. But the size of the variances are required. The question that I'm sure, I won't speak for anybody else on the committee, but what committee members will struggle with, is this a minor variance, or is this a good application that should go to council for a rezoning? It's in my personal opinion, I certainly won't speak for anybody else, I think it's a reasonable application for a rezoning. I don't have anything against what they're looking to do here. It's the responsibility, or what is the function of the Committee of Adjustments. That's what the question is that came from James, and that is the question that was going to come from me as well. So Emily, it's not that, I think planning wise, I think you've done a great job on planning with this. As far as what you're proposing to build, I think in fact, I think it's reasonable. But is it something that should be approved by the Committee of Adjustments, or is it something that should be deferred? Have a discussion with planning, and should it then be looked at and maybe be a rezoning application the council approves?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I absolutely respect committee's view on that. Absolutely. Obviously, we're of the opinion that the numbers do look a bit complex, but when you break it down to what it is minor based on the uniqueness of the lot and the section that we're requiring. But I absolutely understand committee's position.
As the chair, I will again ask for a mover and a seconder. But as you realize, Emily, if there is no mover and seconder, we cannot put the motion forward. So then it comes, do we defeat it or do we defer it? Because those are the only two other applications that we can make. And I'm asking you, if I ask for a mover and a seconder and we do not have those, are we in agreement that we will go for deferral so that we can look at this further with planning?
Yes, we're in agreement.
Okay, then do I have a mover and a seconder for the resolution to approve this application? Do I have a mover and a seconder to defer this application? Moved by Stuart, seconded by James. That the Committee of Adjustment hereby defers variance application A-2022-0021-F Hughes for the following reasons. And those are the reasons we spoke about in regards to, is this a minor variance or is this something that should be taken before council as a rezoning? All those in favor of deferring? Unanimous? Motion is deferred.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I now ask the Committee of Adjustment if we have any other business. Stuart? You're on mute, Stuart. Stuart? Unmute your. Okay, having trouble reading lips, so I'm going to say he's all good. Taylor?
I just wanted to update committee. It might not have been noticed, but following the last meeting and previous applications, we have included a subsection under 3.0 property information, planning applications within past 5 years. And that's where staff can note any applications that have been considered in the past 5 years. That number was somewhat arbitrarily selected, but that would be the previous committee plus a bit of a buffer to help recall anything. And if there's any matters from a previous application that affect one in front of committee today, we will be sure that that is in the analysis. So I just wanted to update committee that we've made that suggested change.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Stuart, do you want to try again?
Can you hear me now?
Can hear you now.
Okay, I just wanted to thank council's decision to increase our gas allowance.
You're welcome.
Okay, is there any other business? All right.
No.
Sorry.
No, not any other business. I was just wondering, this is maybe to learn more than anyone else. I tried to print this month's package because it was so big, you know, I thought, well, maybe I'll print it. Kind of, you know, it's too busy for an iPad. But I found like it wasn't formatted to print. Like some of it printed on the page and some of it printed a half a page. And is there any way to fix that, you think, or no?
We can take a look at it, Terry, and I can see if there's anything on our end that's going on with the formatting.
It didn't seem to be the stuff that you guys put together. It seemed to be the stuff that was coming in from the consultants. You know, some of it was, you know, it would print the border of a plan and that's all it would. So, you know.
Yeah, we can take a look. I can give you a call on that too. It might just be your printer settings that we can just reduce to the margins to print it normally, but
no, yeah, it could be.
We can look into that. Alternatively, we do print them out for a couple of committee members if you want a hard copy.
Oh, yes, please.
Yes, we can add you to the list.
Okay, that's even easier. Thanks very much.
No problem.
Mr. Chair, can I just make a comment? I had a challenge hearing people, the voices kept on breaking up, that kind of thing. Is it my connection here, or are other people experiencing during some of the presentation, some of the conversation?
You seem to be the one that's breaking up, Jim.
Yeah.
Anytime you're trying to speak, it's very hard. We miss a lot of what you're saying. And, we're trying to, you fade in and out.
I'll get rid of her.
I will maybe try another location.
Okay.
See if I.
Excuse me, sorry, we have a young lady here would like to speak.
Well,
Ms.
thank you.
Vanderhoef.
I love being referred to as a young lady. It's very rare to hear that. I just wanted to say hello. My name is Sue Vanderhout. I'm making an application next month. So I wanted the opportunity to hear how you proceed and hear how it's presented. So I just wanted to make sure that you just didn't look and see, oh, what is that person doing here? So that's what I'm doing here. So thank you. And it's been very educational. And my dog is here too, but she's not speaking.
Well, it was nice to meet you, and next month we'll see you again. How's that?
Thank you. Very good. Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a great day. Okay. Any other business? and I think there's only the staff on, Jamie and Taylor, I will bring up the issue in regards to the last application. It's not questioning the position of planning. The issue comes down to what is the responsibility of the Committee of Adjustments for minor variances. And Jamie, I understand completely that the percentages or the numbers can be high. They become more exponential when you're looking at it on, especially on a smaller lot. Those numbers can seem large when you look at them, but in reality, when you go to the site and you see them, they're very reasonable, and I get that. That application for there, I think, quite honestly, I think planning is, the town has done, and the designer has done a great job with.
We might want to be careful here in case, because this is still being recorded, and talking on the specifics application, because they could always appeal a non-decision as well. So I just.
Then I'm not, okay, then I will, I'll talk about any application, and I'll talk about the size of it, because I think the issue comes down to, and I only used it as an example, I can go back to others, but I think that, like I say, and I understand there's leeway, and, you know, under the Planning Act, the Committee of Adjustments can open them, they can approve large changes, which I think is reasonable. But I think that in a lot of these cases, there is a process through council and there is a process through the Committee of Adjustments. And I think that's when James brings up that point, that it's a fair point to bring up, in that where does the line fall? What does council and what does the town want the Committee of Adjustment to be looking at? And what is deemed to be reasonable and what is deemed to be something that should be going to a rezoning. Because just for the Planning Act to allow it doesn't really give any definition, because it, in some cases, because we don't know what gets turned down. We don't have a benchmark of what gets turned down by planning or directed by planning to go to council for a rezoning. So and I'm not that I want to see it, but I think it's reasonable that as a Committee of Adjustment, we do have some definition of what is, I think, what is minor and what is reasonable.
Yeah. No, and thanks. I just wanted to make sure, well, the reason I spoke up was to make sure that committee was aware of the analysis that was undertaken. But we fully, as you respect our professional opinions, we completely respect the committee's decisions on these items too. And through pre-consultation, we can advise applicants that they may seek a better path to success through rezoning, and they don't often take it. So
no, I understand that they have the choice too. So I mean, and I don't know whether, I guess that's part of the process. I realize what you're saying, Taylor, in regards to, you know, non-specific discussions, but I don't know, is that, and then I ask this as a question then, is it reasonable that if planning department has recommended a rezoning and the applicant has declined to take that route and says, I want to exercise my right to a Committee of Adjustment, is that something that the committee should be notified of, or B, even are they able to be completely independent?
If I may just speak to that, you could be, we don't typically provide our pre-consultation comments to the Committee of Adjustment. We do provide pre-consultation comments on applications. So we don't typically provide that. We prepare a staff report based on the actual application itself submitted, because the pre-consultation occurs before the application is actually submitted. Okay. So I don't think it really makes a difference. Your role as the committee is to evaluate these applications based on the 4 tests in Section 45 of the Planning Act, and that's the lane that you're to be in. And yeah. And you have every ability, if you think something's not minor, to not approve something at the end of the day. So, yeah. But I think you did the right thing today by deferring the application. It gives them an opportunity to consider modifications or alternate processes, and I think that's a fair thing to do. So,
does anybody else have any questions or business or concerns? Or Then I'll ask for a mover and a seconder for a resolution to adjourn the May 11th, 2022 Committee of Adjustment hearing. Moved by Stuart, seconded by Jim, that the Committee of Adjustment for the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adjourn this meeting at 5:18 p.m., 5:19 p.m. on Wednesday, May 11th, 2022. The committee will hold its next hearing at 4 p.m. on Wednesday, June 8th, 2022, or at the call of the chair, unless the secretary treasurer has not received complete applications for committee consideration. All those in favor? It is unanimous to go home. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.